It was in March 1928 when 25-year-old Ralph Wilson and 26-year-old George Whaley were travelling to work from their homes in Mount Albert to the city when they came up with the idea to form a rugby league team in the upcoming season. Ralph Wilson hired St George's Hall on the corner of New North Road and Sandringham Road, and George Whaley paid for an advert in the local paper, inviting interested people to come along to the public meeting, which was held on Tuesday the 3rd of April 1928, and was attended by George Rhodes, the chairman of Auckland Rugby League. They got enough keen young local guys to form the Mount Albert Rugby League Club and entered 2 junior grade teams, one in the 3rd grade and one in the 5th grade, in the 1928 season. At the time, the 7 senior rugby league clubs in Auckland were City, Devonport, Ellerslie, Marist, Newton, Ponsonby and Richmond. Incredibly, just 4 months after that meeting in St George's Hall, the first Mount Albert team, including Ralph Wilson and George Whaley, found themselves playing for a record crowd of 28,000 at Carlisle Park in the 3rd grade knockout final curtain raiser before the Kiwis test match against Great Britain. The game was played on Saturday the 4th of August 1928 and was won by the Kiwis 17-13. Mount Albert remained a junior club until the 1934 season, when there was a split at the Marist Club and 8 senior players transferred over to Mount Albert and the club's first senior team was formed. For the first 11 years, the Mount Albert Club was based at the Farmers Paddock in Phyllis Street, now used by the Metro Soccer and softball clubs. Mount Albert stayed at Phyllis Street for 8 years until the 1935 season when they moved to Fowles Park. Auckland Rugby League lent the club $1,400 to build a training shed, which was the club's main building for the next 29 years. Mount Albert played their first ever senior game on the 27th of April 1935 and won, beating City Rovers. The victory led them to being awarded a special game on the following holiday Monday on the 6th of May 1935 against the champion Richmond side at Carlisle Park, their first game there as a senior team. Richmond was considered the top Australasian team at the time. Fowles Park, 30 acres of wasteland previously called Morningside Reserve, was a swampy area covered in gorse and noxious weeds and used as a rubbish dump until the Great Depression in 1933, when the council gave work to a large crew of unemployed people when it was drained and cleaned out and then named Fowles Park after Sir George Fowles, a local MP. One influential player from the Mount Albert in the 1930s was Ray Crunch's brother, Basil Crunch.
Basil was captain of Auckland. He won the Best and Fairest Players with the Dixon Medal, and I was lucky enough to do the same later, and then lucky enough to be captain of Auckland.
Mount Albert's first Kiwis were prop Des Herring and wing Clary McNeil, who were chosen for the 1938 tour of Australia.
Now they had a senior team. Mount Albert was determined to grow and realised to do that they needed a playmaker in a standoff. Therefore, with the help of New Zealand and Auckland leagues in 1938, they looked to Australia and enticed a 25-year-old young man called Bob Bentham from South Sydney to come over as a player coach. Bob Bentham was the first player to come from Australia to play here. Ray Crunch remembers Bob really well.
We'd been out training and I'd gone for a run, come back in to have a shower, and the senior team joined us in the shower, which made it very crowded. And I was standing next to him, and something other than water seemed to course down my leg. And I looked at him and I said, "You're not peeing on me." He said, "I thought you'd never notice." Anyway, that's the style of bloke he was. He was a real happy-go-lucky chap and a bloody good footballer.
The initiative paid off because Bentham guided Mount Albert to their first Fox Memorial and Stormont wins in 1939. Bentham was selected for Auckland in 1939 and is vice-captain for the Kiwi tour to Britain, along with Mount Albert players Brett Leatherborough, a hooker, and Arthur McNary playing centre. But unfortunately in September 1939, World War II broke out and the Kiwis tour was called off after just 2 games, both won by the Kiwis. In 1941, because some of the many men had gone to war, local sports at senior level came to a bit of a standstill, and it was decided to amalgamate some of the clubs. And Albert was joined with City Newton. The plan didn't really work and only lasted until 1943 until the club split up again. Mount Albert Hall of Famer Don Hammond played his first games for the club during this period.
My father was asked by the Mount Albert Rugby League Club to coach a schoolboy team. Initially it was a junior team in 1942, I basically was the mascot, and I filled in whenever they were short. They didn't have the 13 players, so I got to play. I was about 6.5, I think, yeah. I basically learnt it from the ground up, but training at Fowles Park and playing a lot of our home games at Fowles Park and also at Western Springs.
In 1947, Mount Albert Seniors won every cup and championship trophy available and faced the Sydney champions Balmain in an Australasian showdown. Unfortunately, Mount Albert lost 16-11 in a close game.
My brother Eric and I was prop, he was second row. Now, our style was more open, I think. They were more dogged, you know. They were a good team, nice bunch of blokes.
In 1948, Mount Albert played well again and won the Root Brewster and Stormont Shield. Kiwis went on their first tour after World War II in 1947-48, and Mount Albert player Arthur McNenny was the only player who had also gone on to the ill-fated 1939 tour. In 1948, the Sydney champions West came to Auckland and to play the Auckland club champions Marist. They also played a warm-up game against Mount Albert, who had came second to Marist. Mount Albert beat West in that game. The 1950 was a memorable year for Mount Albert. With Ray Crunch as captain, they won the championship Ricketai Shield, the Kiwi Shield and the Root Brewster. However, in October this year, they came up against Blackball, a small mining town on the west coast on the South Island. Blackball had beaten the top Christchurch side 53-13, so this game would establish the best team in the country. Blackball trounced Mount Albert 35-15 at Carl Park, scoring 9 tries in the process.
It's always been a source of annoyance to me that they beat us so easily. No excuses, they were just a better team. And the fact that they were mostly coal miners, and they were a little bit tougher than the city boys, I'm afraid, because their physical work gave them sort of edge on just blokes running around a paddock. One
of the characters of the 1950 Mount Albert team was Rod Seymour, later to become publican of the Puhoi Hotel.
Yeah, bloody character. He had a set of false teeth. We went on a trip to Taranaki, and Ross had a funnel and a rubber hose fitted onto the funnel so you could piss into it without stopping on the bus. When he had the pub at Puhoi, we used to go and see him, and he had a door in the bar with all the photos of the Mount Albert teams that he played in. And that was the beauty of the team. They were all good blokes.
Mount Albert continued their winning ways with successes in 1951, sharing the championship and Ricketai Shields of Richmond. 1952 saw a clean sweep of all 4 titles by Ponsonby. But in 1953, Mount Albert won the Ricketai Shield, and in 1954 shared the Ricketai Shield with the old rivals Ponsonby.
There were so many good players. One chap I enjoyed playing with Laurie Cooney, who went in the '54 World Cup. It was such a good team from 1946 on to when I finished in 1954. They never, ever knew when they were beaten. And I've always been proud of the fact that you could rely on them, the whole team. There wasn't a weak link in those Mount Albert teams of that era.
An important person in the club's history was Laurie Cooney. Brian Morwood tells Laurie's story.
Laurie came into the club in 1946, just after the war, and started as a player, but I don't think he wouldn't have gone down as a great player. But so he moved into coaching, and he coached Donny Hammond and Ron Ackland and Ray Crunch, yeah, later on with Ray, and was a very successful Mount Albert coach. I think won a couple of Foxes, and then went on to become a hugely successful Auckland coach. and held the record for the most number of consecutive wins with Auckland, I think, for a long time, until Bob Bailey had that exceptionally good side in the 80s. Then went into managing here. He managed teams, managed premier teams for a lot of different coaches, and then just became a lifelong supporter. Wonderful guy. And the accolade of the club rooms, the top lounge being named after him was just, apart from his life membership, was just his proudest moment. I'll be blue and gold till the day I die.
Laurie would come up after training. I was living on the arse, bones of me arse, had no money, he'd buy me a beer, give me some ice. After a game he'd say, sit down here, Curran. He was a great man, Laurie Cooney, and yeah, guys like that, you know, you think, and they leave a lasting impression.
Ron Ackland, who played for Melbourne in the 1950s, was arguably the club's greatest ever player.
He should have been the century's best player. When they had the presentation of the player of the century, as we left the hall, one of the gentlemen that was on the selection panel was standing at the door, and I was so wild about Ronnie not getting the award that I just asked him what he'd been smoking at the selection panel.
Don Hammond, who was captain of the Kiwis from the second row, actually preferred to play in the backs.
When Tom Baxter came to coach Mount Albert in the late 50s, and he had too many backs and not enough forwards, and he just said to some of us, would you mind playing in the forwards? And I said, well, I don't care where I play as long as I get a game. So,
under the district scheme, which ran from 1959 to 1963, Mount Albert joined with Point Sheriff to form Western United. Mount Albert, as part of the Western United, won the Fox Memorial and Ricketai Shield the first year of district football in 1959.
The worst thing about the district scheme was that no one had their own club rooms. Like, we had this club rooms here with no seniors. So, so Western United had the Point Sheriff Club, but they didn't go back to that. So they used to have, after matches, went to the Grosvenor, and they had a room up top of in the Grosvenor pub. Right. So I think the people in our club, Mount Albert then, said, well, we're losing our club because the top players who are playing in the Auckland comp are not coming down. Finally they had meeting after meeting, and then they decided to come back to club football.
In the early 1960s, the game was still played with unlimited tackles.
It was like rugby play rucks and try and hold the ball for minutes. You just ran from dummy half and barged and ran from and there was back play and scoring, but there was no subs much in those days. Maybe had two reserves, and they just run from dummy half a hell of a lot, and big, strong, low to the ground guys were the order of the day.
Where was your defensive line? The defensive line.
3 metres, 3 metres each way. So
yeah, and
pretty hard to make a break. So you had to be a ball player.
It was 1 metre from the centre line. So if you drop the ball and they got it back, they'd hold it for another 10 minutes, and you'd be tackle, 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 and then you get it back, and then if somebody kicked it out, you know, you'd down there strangle them.
I can remember saying to Billy Tocker, Billy was our halfback, and he was a good little halfback. But at this particular stage down at Carlett Park, every time he got the ball and Roffey was hooking pretty well, Billy was kicking it. And I said to Billy, if you kick that bloody ball out again, I'll give you a decent old kick up the bum. And Billy looked at me and he said, I think you're serious. I said, I'm bloody sure I'm serious.
The best thing they ever did was, of course, to come, 1 year we came back to 4 tackles.
Right. Started at 4 tackles.
4 tackles, yeah. And that didn't work. It
was too little, you know. It was 3 plays and a kick, you know, or it wasn't enough game, you know. So they went to
6. And once we got to 6,
that was
and then they moved us apart. It was 3 or 5 metres, and then they'd start putting us back to 10 metres.
But even 5 was okay, wasn't it?
Yeah, but 10 was great. 10 was when you
miles,
first started playing. The opposition was in the mist somewhere. They were miles away. But it did open up the game.
The building of a new clubhouse in 1964 was a major development at the club.
It was an old dung of the old shed, but it was really just a changing shed that they used as a...
Yeah, that's what it was.
You know, it's just a changing
warm
room.
beer. They didn't have a fridge over there, so if you got a beer, it was warm. In '62, the council agreed to put the concrete base in, and then the club had to then raise money and build the top. But it wasn't as big as this now.
They did the showers and all that, didn't they?
Yeah, they did the showers and everything down there. A chap called Frank Butler, who was on the committee for years, played in his early days. He sort of ran it in the weekends, and all the chippies like myself and electricians all helped.
And they were all Mount Up, like...
Yeah.
All Mount Up blokes, yeah.
Yeah.
All Mount Up, all the Mount Up blokes.
Amazing.
Playing in grades and seniors and reserves.
Yeah.
I think it must have taken about 6 months.
Made a huge difference. They had somewhere to come, you know. It was,
Yeah.
it was great. You had your own table. There was the 3rd grade and the seniors were over there, and the 8th grade was over there, and whatever, you know.
The one thing I remember, mainly in my age group, is it was always a family club, and my kids, 2 kids came all the time with Ray Wilson's kids.
From the district football in 1964, Mount Albert tasted success again in the new 14-team senior competition.
We're on the Root Rooster, which was a knockout, and then we played the champions and beat Otahu the following week again. So we actually won the Root Rooster and the champions champ. Yeah. Don Hammond, he coached in 64, 65, 66. And then in 67, Jack Fagan.
Fagan came.
Ray Wilson was kicking around at the time.
Ray got dragged up very early before Barry came up.
We were all 3rd grade. That didn't even went out of 3rd or 8th grade.
Yeah, they dragged Ray up and we played him on the wing. He was very young then.
Very fast. Skillful player.
Yeah, and Johnny Dagg came in later.
John came in 67 or 8, something like that, and played right through forever. Yeah, so
John was good.
Yeah, winger too, eh?
Winger, powerful winger, very strong, with a lot of pace. And then Gary did come in
took us in 68,
and
69.
turned the team around, didn't he? It made it great. And us young guys came through that year.
And he brought a lot of young guys up.
So we had a good mix of young and old. Not that you're old yet.
No.
A highlight of the '68 season was playing the Sydney champions Souths.
They won their championship. They were the champion team for about 8 years in a row, and then we won over here. So someone decided to have a Trans-Tasman Championship club final, and so they came over.
Carlo. And I think the crowd was about 18,000.
Packed, absolutely packed. When they played us, we had a great game and led at half time. They scored, and then we scored again after half time. And
South had a lot of good players.
They had 9 current test players at the time, so it's a pretty good side, you'd have to say.
Oh, there were some great footy players, weren't they?
John Sattler and Bob McCarthy.
69 we won it again.
Yeah.
That's right, and the Stormont Shield.
Yeah. And then I think we run us up the next 2 years.
Yeah, next 2 years, yeah. We've had 4 finals. We had teamwork, I reckon.
Yeah.
I've always thought we
had
played
a good culture.
Good culture of die-hard sort of defence and quite good attack, but we're a hard team to beat.
We were a bit dour, and we defended.
We got good tries, but only because we wore them down. We had a very, very strong defensive team, and not so much big hits, but just good workers.
Getting into position.
I think growing up in them days as a junior, the guys going to Cola Park and watching John Dagg on the wing, Richard Bolton at forward, Gary Dick, they were great days. We had a team we could follow, and they were at the top of the tree. So.
We won in '69 against Otahu in a battle, Titanic battle. In the semi-final. We didn't play them in the final, and it was in the final on the 70. A year later, it was just Titanic again, and they won 10-8 or 10-7, or like a nothing score game, but just 2 Titanic battles. So they had 8 Kiwis, I think, in their side.
We did make the top 4, and then.
Yeah, well, we got the final on 70 and 71, but after that we got third.
Yeah, but we got 3rd or 4th, and we got to the stage where we were just getting pipped.
We'd lost some good players. Henry Tardner had left.
I was getting older, Gary was getting older, and of course Hammond had gone, and Barry's group was in the right age, but we just didn't have the whole team of them. Gary had his own style, and if you've ever met Gary,
ruthless.
the team talks were very some of them
Strong.
were strong, you know.
Ultra strong.
Strong, but it's just a little culture that everybody wanted to play.
He came in one half time, we'd be playing well behind, he'd get somebody, he came running in, he'd run in with his big paper bag and blew it up. Anyone here break this? I bet you can't. You're all blinkety, blinkety, blink, fucking useless, you know. Can you bust it? Can you bust it? Paper bag, you know. So we all next time we go in with 30 points in the second half. Yeah.
I know, we had some good years. And then with Cess in 75, it was just a disaster. I shouldn't talk to him because he was a lovely bloke and a marvellous footballer in his day, but it was just a joke.
What was it?
Well, they bought 5 rugby players who had never played league, which is, and like I said before, Barry and I ended up doing all the tackling because we knew where to stand.
Right.
And these guys, you can't blame them, but I don't know about Cess. I mean, Brian Morwood came in, I think, the following year.
Yeah, and Ray Wilson coached the next year.
Yeah, and Ray Wilson coached the next year.
The name Lions for the Mount Albert Club came from the redesign of the jerseys by 3 senior players over a couple of beers one night before the 1969 season in a notorious pub in Kangahape Road. At first they used a triangle with seagulls, but quickly changed it to a lion's crest.
Gary Dick and Ray Wilson and me, we got together the gold jersey with the V on it. We wanted to be like in Australia. We went up to the Rising Sun and we had a drink one night. We wanted to just make a jersey, a bit like that one, that's what I know, you know. And we had the old one, with the hoops. And I don't know where the lion came from. It must have been, I think it was on the coat of arms for Mount Albert. Like the grammar school's got that. The grammar school, the Mags grammar school's got a lion on it.
Because we weren't the Lions in 64.
No.
We were Mount Albert. No.
You know.
Well, we got televised a lot. So
quite a few times, didn't
some days. So,
but you couldn't see it because you didn't have recorders then, so you were playing, you couldn't see yourself play, so you don't know what you looked like. So.
Might have been a good thing.
Might have been, yeah.
Yeah.
Gary Dick pulled me up to play first grade here at Premiers in 1974 when I'd been playing reserve grade. So in them days, reserve grade, we didn't go up and down, we just stayed at reserve grade. And we were shit, we weren't playing that, we were just losing. But anyway, I got a crack, and I played against Ponsonby in Kola Park. And the first time I took the ball up, Tony Rota gives me that welcome to Kola Park right across the nose and decks me. And I get up swearing and carrying on like a muppet. The referee says, calm down, son, or you'll get more. Unbelievable, I'm getting blood and nose. So that was welcome to Kola Park. It's some tough guys back in the day, you know. I had my nose broken 8 times and I can only remember 2. So, yeah.
Pacific Island players make a significant contribution to the club now. Brian Morwood recalls when they began to make their presence felt.
The families from the island started coming in the 60s. That's when they first started coming in. So their kids were started playing here in the 70s. There was a lot of island boys playing here in the 70s. Tafara Satini, Marcus Poesi, George Poesi, Jim Poesi.
Arthur Brown was a great man here. Didn't want to drink, Arthur. Terrible punter, but he was a great man. He was always here for the, as a chairman. He was the chairman, he used to have to wear a tie and all that carry on.
We came back in as a committee in 78. A group of us, there was Arthur, Bernie Carroll was a deputy chairman, Ozzie Lowe was a secretary, I was a treasurer, and Ricky Stevens was the club captain. And Brownie got the club back on its feet. When I took over as treasurer, we were $15,000 in the red, which was a lot of money in those days. We turned that around. And Brownie, being the guy that he was, he just set the club back on even keel again. And he went through till 1980.
The 1970s started reasonably well for the club, but they then went through a rebuilding process, and at the end of 1979 came bottom of the First Division and were relegated.
I only really got a start in Premier football because they were so bad. Seriously, we lost, in my first year, I think we lost 13 games in a row. We're the worst side
He got demoted to Division 2.
Worst team the club's ever had, you know.
I remember leaving Fowles Park with tears in my eyes because it was the first time we'd ever gone to second division, and next year we were going to be playing in second. That was 79. But on reflection, that actually wasn't a bad thing for us because we had young players. And it gave Mike a year to mould them and for them to play against a lesser opposition, if you like.
However, the junior grades were strong, and Mount Albert was building into what was to become a golden era.
We won second division. We beat Eastern United, and then we got the right to come back to first division. And then we came back to first division in 81, and that was my first year as president. And I spoke to Mike McLennan and said to look at how we felt would be a successful year for 81, and he said, well, he'd be happy if we made the top 4. And that was what we sort of set out to do. But we only lost 3 games the whole year and won the comp, you know. It was just amazing. Amazing.
You know, it was kind of a lucky time because we got Mike, but we also, like the club had been very strong in the juniors for a number of years, you know.
There was sort of our grade, and there was Mark Bourneville, Ricky Cowan, Skippy George, Dean Williams, so they all went on to play topside and do well. And there was Jeff Ackland's team, then there was Cooper's team, and then there was Acker's team. So there was like a whole lot of grades that were all really good teams, and so they all moved forward into that top side of the 80s.
They were all local boys. They'd all been to the same schools. You know what I mean? It's kind of a sort of a unique time, really.
And of course, you had Gary Prome come along, and then the Mount Roskill boys and Dommy, and so each year it sort of got more and more players come in and helped, and that's kind of where that big run went, really, wasn't it? Yeah.
The success from there just ran on. We won it in 82. We were grand finalists in 83 and dead set unlucky not to win it. And then we won it 84, 85, 86, which is the most successful run in the club's history. Fitness was number 1. He killed them out there with fitness.
This is a beautiful park, and little things like that, they're not little, it's a big thing. And of course we had the sprint track, and so that was very important to me. We had a very good loyal supporter of the side that was a great robber, and we got the latest sprint spikes and that, so we had the sprint track, and we come out, we've all got these
new spikes,
and listen,
$5 each or something.
That's
incredible.
500.
Yeah.
But
in a big bag, wasn't it? Like a big rubbish bag.
Yeah, and we used to burn that bag. And then we had up around the top. We used to time them, of course. Then we used to use the Zoo Hill, and Clayton Gray used to put his hand up halfway through the session. There's a little old lady that lived over the road, so he used to run, Mike, I've got to go to the toilet, and he'd rush, knock on the door. Well, we'd be going for half an hour still, and then, okay, come on back to Fowles. Where's Clayton? He comes out after we'd left, and he come back down around the other way instead of the bullock track. So he knew I was going to.
I've been lucky enough to understand a lot about getting teams ready over the years, and mate, what we were doing in the 80s, I don't know how he did it, but it was bang on, mate, like in terms of the length of our longer runs at the start of the year, the mixing it up and getting right up to finals where you had to peak a team and get the speed, and so going from that endurance and the speed, I mean, hell, you know, I can remember walking down Carlaw Park Lane for a few of the Fox finals with your bag over your shoulder, and I tell you what, you just felt invincible. You know, you were bang on, and so it's pretty, those how we got prepared, you know, it was real good. Spot on, and it was all perfect 30 odd years ago, you know. So
there were great times at the club as they celebrated their success.
The 1981 grand final, I think beer was about 60 cents a can. We had a marquee out there because we couldn't get everybody in the club rooms, and we took $7,000 over the bar. I think the following year, 82, I think we took $11,000 in a night. So we had 2 big stainless steel beer tanks, and I think they were 500 and something litres each. And we would sometimes do 3 of those in a week. We were turning over more beer here than most of the pubs in the city were turning over. I don't know whether that's something to be proud of or not, but...
My first one was 82, and you'd had we had all these boxes of champagne, like, and they put on everything for you, and had boxes of champagne and that, and I got a bit clever. I thought, fuck, I'll grab a couple of these and hide them up in the gum trees there, you know, just because they'll run out. And then later on, I'll go and get them. I couldn't find them. Still haven't find them. So if you want to have a look out there, you might come across some 1982 Marque Vus. You know?
That was a good year too.
Yeah. Mike's singly the best coach that I've ever had any association with. He was volatile, and at times we did clash, but we always sorted it out.
In the '86 grand final, we met here before we went down. We were playing Te Atitude, and you organised, the whole club was here. We didn't know, and we got walked before the club, and everyone, all our family and friends, and you had them, everyone sing United We Stand, Divided We Fall. Oh my God, like, you walk, we were in tears, and we walked out, and I think we beat them by the biggest score at that stage. It's been beaten since by Mount Albert. So yeah, it was. That was a good one. That one, Senior Blue, masterstroke.
What coming with Ted Saunders was the video.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
so
exactly. We had videos.
We had videos. And
we'd watch them.
And we'd watch them break them. See that? Look at that. He's got his back turned and et cetera, et cetera.
And Howells will play the ball back to Ackland on the halfway line. He gets the passway to McLennan. McLennan turning on a Cowan, who comes back toward the play the ball area. Fends off a couple of weak tackles. Gets it on to Ackland. Ackland turning on to McLennan. McLennan jinks a little bit. There's a wall of blue jerseys. And gets the passway to Cowan. Cowan drops the ball. It's picked up by McLennan, who accelerates. In goes Morrison. And he gets the passway to Yesatine. I'll start a run here in a moment. Here goes Ackland straight up centre field. He accelerates a long pass high on the air.
I come back and coach Mount Albert. You know, like doing videos was a normal thing, you know. Well, yeah, sure. And we were able to, but it's just, that was the normal thing, and you know, we did well in 04, 05 and 06. I think I had the Bartercard Cup then, so it was all part and parcel. But gee, back in the 80s to have that.
Pete was very good on the camera,
The carpet inspector.
The carpet inspector, you come You're always whistling to himself. Pete, come
good man, yeah.
The big games we played at Carlisle Park, which had a character all of its own.
And a great day for the Lions in the sun here at Carlisle Park. Earlier,
you know, because you want you fix the league. You went down to Carlisle, and Carlisle was nice and central, and good place to be. It's you know, it's really sad, all of us that were involved in the game and know what it was like on a Sunday.
You know, this is the intimacy of Carlisle Park. I remember there's a fella called Freddie Hawkins, was a bookmaker in Auckland, and of course he followed the league. And like, we were on a bit of a run, and we had about 3 upset wins in a row, and every time we won an upset, like Freddie Hawkins he'd come down the window and he'd go, John, and I'd go over and he'd poke me through this money. He said, shout the boys, you know, always. And I always shouted, I always gave them their cut. Yeah, I was thinking.
And the other thing too, on a Sunday, if you wanted to have a beer, you had to go to a league club. So it was driving, you know, there was no bars and that were open on a Sunday. You couldn't go buy your beers from the supermarket like today. If you're going to go to a party, you went to the league club and grab your beers off there, you know. So yeah, it's a big hub, you know, it's really good.
The Man Up teams of the 1980s had some outstanding players.
Oh, like Shane Cooper, he was a great player. Coops, he, you know, couldn't run out of sight in the dark night, but he had time on the paddock, and he was a great player.
Gary Prone, like, it was just incredible, incredible how fast he was on that sprint track. He was murdering all the rest of us, and just so powerful and strong, and what an athlete. What a player.
Marcus was extremely fast over the first 20 or 30 metres, amazingly fast. And he could just tackle, he could just cut him in half. He left him, you know, you could hear the gasps from the railway stand when he hit somebody.
And of course, Acker, you know, could tackle, he knew that he could read the play. Even, you know, young Bluey, Glenn Townsend, the list, they was just, yeah. Darryl Williams come over, Mark Bourneville, you know, some great players there.
Media would be ringing me up and say, is there going to be a box on at the start of the game? Yeah. Hey, Edge, we're not there, we're refined gentlemen.
Rocket used to start them all.
Yeah, Jeff Ackland, yeah, bang, caught that right, now it's on.
Good player.
Good player, and he had trouble with his knees. Yeah. Never-ending trouble with his knees.
He could play.
Otherwise, he would have been a Kiwi great. Yeah. Honestly, he could step off both feet. He wasn't as big as a lot of his opponents, but
good feet. I remember he used to have that beautiful feet where he could push himself off.
Very good. A lot of time for Jeffrey. And then on the same thing, like his brother John was clinical. And of course Coop and Brian as captains, you know, they were perfect.
A lot of ball players, like a lot of guys that could play the ball and read numbers. And I personally think the whole team was tough right through. You know, like we were really tough to play against. Like they knew, you know, every team that played us, they knew that we were never going to go away. You know, and we always finished strong. So there's lots of toughness. Acker, Cooper, like Shane, mate, he was probably one of the only distributors that really distributed in the line. Like he was right in the line, and you know, he's just so tough. And the Tumabavis, I mean, you know, Tony, I've seen him do incredible things, you know, of toughness, and Paddy too.
They just put that extra little bit of meanness. You know, that's smart enough. You know, I wouldn't allow. You know, if they wanted to punch up and started it, that's different. But really, they knew when they played Man Albert, you're going to get hit hard, and you're expected to get the same.
You know, there was a toughness. There's a Man Albert toughness anyway, and I'm glad to see it's still here.
Never die attitude.
Never die, No, you just keep going.
And then, you know, 86 was our last grand final. And then we dropped in a bit of a hole again, because that's what happens. Tends to happen. We lost some players, and Mike carried on for another year or two, maybe, I think. And then it was a pretty long, slow slog then for a while.
Man Albert jealously guarded the proud reputation of the club.
I remember John Dagg up here, true story. He was a club captain, and he saw one guy in the 80s training in a Man Albert jersey. Now, in them days, the jerseys came back in, they never went out. So John Dagg straight down there and up this bloke, where you get that Man Albert jersey from? Took it off him. That's, you know, because that was what happened. They kept the jersey.
It was Man Albert's success in the 1980s that led to the formation of the Warriors.
Rocky Kavanagh brought it up here at that committee and said, why don't we apply to the NRL to play, you know, in the NRL? And of course, personally, I poo-pooed it. You know, you get it, you have what you're doing, you know. And so they did. You know, they sent an application in, and we got a letter back saying, thank you for your application, but we're not looking any further than the teams we've got at the moment, etc., etc. So it was quite a nice letter, apparently, that did come back. A group went to the Auckland Rugby League to put it to them, and George Rainey was the chairman, if I remember rightly. And they basically just pushed it aside, pretty much, but then obviously started to look into it to think, well, this might not be a bad idea. So that then I think the approach was made through the Auckland Rugby League.
Came to fruition.
And the Warriors are there today probably because of Rocky Kavanagh.
8 winning years in the 1980s encouraged the club to borrow money to extend the clubhouse, but coaches and players had retired and moved on to other clubs in Auckland and overseas. As a result, the club lost games, crowds and money. The early 1990s saw a financial crisis that had the club on the brink of closure.
In '92, by the Time we'd got all the invoices in and everything in, we owed $96,000 and we didn't have a cent. We had nothing. We were on the real verge of closing. DB had lent us the money to do the club rooms and we'd reneged on our loan. They'd stopped paying the loan because we had no money. So they weren't very impressed with that, and we owed $24,000 to a liquor company, and they'd put a 218 out against us. So briefly I rang the liquor company and said, look, if you're going to close us down, that's your right, but I said all you're going to get is 2 stainless steel beer tanks and some shitty old furniture. So I said, give us a chance to, we'll keep dealing with it, give us a chance to, we'll pay 7 days, and whenever we've got some money, we'll drip feed what, the extra that we owe. So they were happy with that. It fell into place. It took us 18 months and we didn't owe a cent. And we had $10,000 in the bank. And it's something that myself and the committee I'm exceedingly proud of.
We had no idea that they were in such financial strife at all. We had no idea. They were that, I guess they were that good that they just, they hit it really well. Yeah. I can recall there was discussion over match payments and a lot of the players were upset with what was happening with the match payments. But I do remember the club always paying all the players up at the end of the season, or if not going into the following season. But with regards to the club itself, no, I didn't. Nobody really had any idea of the financial strife that they were actually in. And what what a great job to actually get them out of that horrible hole.
Despite their money problems, in 1992 the club won the minor premiership, the Ricto Shield, but then lost the Fox 11-6 to Northcote. Lou Sutton recalls this game.
Yeah, bummer that one. We were competitive right to the very end. We had some real good players, some real young players, real fast, but we were always fit. Dominic Clark was coaching us at the time. He had us always really fit. I can remember the semi-final actually playing Otahu and scoring in the last minute. It was one of those situations of Mount Albert diehards. No one gave up, and right on the hooter we actually scored to put us into the final, which took us up against Northcote, who had actually won it the year before. And the funny thing was, we actually had an opportunity to win it. What was it, 11-6? Yeah, so towards the very end part of the game, Kerry Kite, one of our toughest props, was actually carrying the ball and got himself across the line, but the ball was knocked out and was disallowed the try. But nobody knew Kerry had actually broken his hand. He had broken his hand because he had punched Richard Greer. Richard Greer was the hooker for Northcote at the time. They were disallowed a try because of it. The ball had been passed out to Vasuafa. Vasuafa had run the full length of the field, and Richard Greer was actually holding Kerry back. So Kerry just turned around, socked him clean on the chin, and actually broke his hand, and that was in the first half. So he continued playing the second half with his broken hand. When he dropped the ball, we just guessed it was because of the hand, but he never told anybody until actually after the game. Yeah, tough bastard.
Women's League made a brief appearance in the 90s.
It must have been in that 92, 93 era when we were struggling for money that a couple of girls came to our meeting and they said they wanted to run a women's rugby league side out of Mount Albert. And I said, you've probably come to the wrong chairman to ask. And they said, why? I said, well, just, women play rugby league. Men play rugby league. Women don't play rugby league. Anyway, they put a pretty strong case to us, and someone whispered in my ear, they get huge crowds on a Sunday. The women's get huge crowds. We needed money, so I buckled. And actually it turned out they were a good bunch, and there was actually a couple of them could actually play footy. But it helped us here on a Sunday when they had the tournament down here because the place was full. Yeah. The bar just rocked, and they were for the couple of years that they were here, and I think they're only here about maybe 2 years or maybe 3. They were actually quite good for the club.
What happened through the 93-94 was after our grand final, a lot of our guys had actually signed up for contracts somewhere else. We had quite a few of them travel to Perth, and then me and my brother and that had travelled to France. So the team actually got slightly broken up, and they were tough times, but then they brought out a new competition, the Line Red Cup, through that period where we, all of a sudden it then also dispersed our players. When I came back, there was a lot of players who were actually playing for the Auckland Vulcans and North Harbour. So we had players, Mount Albert players playing for North Harbour, some playing for Auckland, some playing for, I think it might even be Waitakere or something. Really quite bizarre.
At the end of the 1990s, Mount Albert found themselves in the 3rd Division.
Yeah, terrible time. Yeah. Don't know why I'm laughing, it was bloody horrible. Yeah, we just didn't have a lot of success at all. Right, 94 right through to about 98, 99, and of course we struggled from the 98, 99, 2000, still in the 3rd Division. In my last year of 1998, we actually won the 3rd Division. And I guess it was a good time to retire. Yeah, it really was just a lack of players, and the players that we did have playing with us were really young.
Mount Albert did claw their way back out of the 3rd Division, and in the 2000 era, we were once again a great club.
The Auckland Rugby League, there was no promotion relegation, so we're in 3rd Division and we couldn't get out of it. So I went down month after month down to senior officers. I kept saying to them, look, you've put up a wall and on it says Mount Albert will never play 1st Division football again, and that's not fair. We want the right to get out. So eventually they changed it, and we got out of 3rd Division to 2nd, then we got out of 2nd Division and came up the following year to play premiers. Dominic Clark and Paul Gordon approached the committee and said we want to put a side under Mount Albert's name in the Bartercard Cup. My opinion was that we needed a year in the Fox to hone our skills and then go from there. And I said, anyway, we've got no money, we can't finance it. They said, well, if we raise the finance, can we put a team in? So the committee agreed to that. And we weren't all that successful the first year. I think the 2nd year we made the playoffs, and if I'm correct, the 3rd year we won it, which made us, you know, a standalone club and the most successful club in New Zealand. Amazing.
We won 2002. Yep, Bartercard.
Awesome.
Yep.
Power involved, 2002.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good year.
Good year.
Yeah, we had a good team as well, eh?
Yeah.
Some big props in there.
We had the likes of Hutch Maiava, Dave Logo, Sala.
Fui was there.
Fui was he there in 2002? He could have been there.
Yeah.
There were some players that actually went on and played NRL and actually achieved some good careers out of the game.
Peter Lewis, eh?
Peter Lewis had a crack at Parramatta at one stage. Yep. You know, there's some good boys. You know, some really good boys. Carlo Park, Peter Lewis. Peter Lewis, broken hand.
He broke his hand the night before, the day before last
game. He had a big pin in it.
Yeah.
Broke it, like training football.
Oh well, that was the story. We found out later. The real story behind it.
There was a little bit of calmness about us, though. You could actually just feel that, you know,
we had good supporters as well, eh?
We were going to get the job done.
Yeah, on the South End stand, I remember there, all yellow with banners and stuff, and had Levy on the suit there.
Yeah, Livy, she was wearing the Lions suit.
The Lions suit.
Skinner's,
running up and down.
Skinner's runtiest line you've ever seen. Yeah. She popped round the back and kids are yanking the tail and she popped round the back for a smoke and all sorts of things. We had a really good management structure. I think the club had got to a point where they'd said enough was enough, and the club had decided, you know, the people wanted to progress and be successful, and hence they'd put a team together, and management and coaching structure together for that. Sponsors were a big part of it. You know, even the guys who were on our management team that ploughed money into the team. Now all those ingredients sort of added up to that professional outfit we had. At that stage, Bartercard, it was countrywide, so it wasn't just Auckland-wide. We were flying to Christchurch and Wellington, and yeah, Canterbury were up there as well. And the standard of footy was good. You know, it was high right around the country. You know, it was a tough year of football. You know, we'd be at the airport some days. They pay sort of 6 in the morning. Flights.
Own plane, the little private jets.
There's little 19-seaters. Yeah.
Across the airport on the way back.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah. No, I actually remember Hackers putting the old pilot's hat on and walking out the plane and come on, follow me, boys. You know, but usually if I look like, oh shit, we're in trouble here. But you know.
Yeah, it was pretty. Yeah,
it must have been a pretty heavy schedule, I guess.
Yeah.
Working also at the same time.
Yep.
Everybody holding down jobs.
Yep. Yep.
Are you unemployed?
It was funny enough. At the time, I worked for Mark Bedford. He paid me $6 an hour. Yeah, Mark.
Miserable bastard.
Yeah.
He's still paying $6 an hour. But Bedford actually, in saying that, he was our trainer too.
Yeah.
He was our trainer. He was a bit of a tough trainer. There were some funny things happened through the year. Like I distinctly remember my first training. I turned up and hadn't done a hell of a lot in summer. And I turned up and we were doing 400 straight away. And I was like 50 metres behind everyone else coming from this other club. I didn't come back Thursday. You know, it took me a week to get my head around the fact that, you know, this is a change and it's going to be tough. And it took me a week to get my head into it and turn up the training again. But old Bedford, what was the saying? There's no loser's lump. That was his.
I think he was fit as well. He would run with the boys and do 400s, and this was really high.
We're always the fittest team in the comp, I think. You know, coming to Mount Albert, it kind of defined our characters too. You either made it and you toughed it out and you had that mental capacity to train hard and be successful, because there were still plenty of guys who turned up thinking, oh, I'll play at Mount Albert, but couldn't cut the training and sort of fall away as well. So I reckon it's a club that kind of defines you individually as well.
I remember Fui, who turned up in. He's a trainer though, back in the day, and Eckers dropped him to the reserves. Didn't like it, eh? Yeah. So I think he went back to Pursuit.
I remember.
But then he came back.
Yeah, Fui was one of those guys who had that loser's limp, but he went on and made a career out of the game. I'm buggered if I know how.
So you guys had great success also, 204, 205, 206, 207.
Yeah. We just had a really good nucleus, didn't we? And some of them, to be fair, were probably the best domestic players in the country as a group. So, yeah, it was pretty good. Good times.
The Bartercard team I had, they were tough boys like Bucky and Calvin Wrights and Regan Wiggs, and they were tough, So and then that come out of that era, like they would come here and have a beer and talk with John Ackland, and talk with Mickey Curran, talk with Dominic Clark, and so it all it all ends up going through the decades, doesn't it? Really. So 04, 05, 06. And then Chock took over, and so there was a good era through there. And,
Ackers just before you?
Yeah, Ackers 02, and then he went to France in 04, and Dommy got a hold of us and, says, come and coach Mount Albert, and couldn't believe it, like turn up, like have 80 kids training in pre-season. And
actually with Bluey, it was always a fine line between drinking that last beer and catching the plane at the airport. And I think the one time that really stood out, we're in Wellington, and mate, same thing. It's what time do we leave? Oh, we've got time for another one, 5 more minutes. And anyway, we end up on the bus and we race back to the airport. As soon as we get there, like the plane's about to leave in like 5 minutes, so it's bags, gates, go. Everyone, all the boys, all the coaches, all the managers, bags, sprint. They're off to the races. They're down the raceway, and we get the plane. Anyway, it's not till Tuesday we get to training, and Junior looks a little bit pissed off. And we're saying, "What's the matter with you, mate?" And he goes, "You bastards, you left me at the bus. Everyone jumped off the bus and took off. Who was going to carry all the gear in?" So it wasn't even until Tuesday that anyone even thought about Junior, and he had to grab all the bags, check him in, missed his flight, and probably got, I don't know if he got home the next morning or later that night, but yeah, not even one person thought about him. So that was a bit of humour at the time.
The ghost.
Yeah, it's just pretty funny. He's been filthy ever since too. Yeah. They used to have a lot of, they called New Zealand Day and Resurgence teams that were selected out of Barnacard in those days, and we had a couple of massive tours to England and France and US, month-long tours. There was the first year, 2002, I think, there was about 9 or 10 Mount Albert players represented New Zealand, Team New Zealand 8. Yeah, Axe was good. Bluey came in 04, and he was outstanding, mate. Yep. I probably learnt the game, or learnt to understand the game under Bluey. Never really, that clarity was never really there, but when he broke it down and the way he talks and makes it so simple and understandable, mate, he just broke the game down, and that's, for me, that was just, and he's still probably one of the smartest, if not the smartest guy around rugby league that the country's got. You know?
We had a real, in 05 it was tough. We had like halfway through the year we had a boy, Paulo Tinasili, and he passed away. And he had a brain aneurysm, and that was really, really hard. And we had counsellors come in, and we really struggled with that, and we ended up getting through to the grand final of the Barnacard Cup, and we were playing Canterbury. And we were out, like, with Paulo's father and brother led us out onto the field. We were probably a bit emotional, which is understandable. And we're down by 14 points, I think, with 10 minutes to go. And apparently Mickey Curran had screamed out, threw his hands up in the air and screamed out at the crowd and called the referee a hump and walked off to his car. You know, I thought it was all over. Well, we come back and we actually won right on the, and which was really nice for Paulo's dad and brother, because, you know, they genuinely believed, you know, and it was him. He smiled on us and helped us. So that kind of, you know, there's lots of different things that can happen in your journey in any years in clubs, and that one sort of made us get tighter, just knowing to appreciate and be grateful for what you got.
But he was outstanding, and then Chock came in after him and carried on with what Bluey did, and to be fair, we had some really top players back then who just carried that on, really, carried that success on.
The club's successes in the 2000s has carried on to 2010 decade.
I finished in 09 and then basically took over coaching in 2010. Didn't play, just purely coached. And it was kind of an end of an era that year for us as well. We had a lot of our old guys, the Julian O'Neills and Anthony Swans and guys like that, Regan Wiggs, sort of finishing up. Yeah. We still got to a grand final, which was really pleasing. I had Benny Lyth as my assistant back then, and he was awesome to have around. But even that year, I thought we probably overachieved in getting to the grand final, and we came real close to winning it too. We sort of only lost it in the last minute or so.
Was it 2-11?
It was 2010. Yeah. 11 we come third, I think. And then we won the big one in 2012 where we smashed Glenora. Yeah. The reality is we played we keep making grand finals. I mean, the club since 2002 has only missed out on the grand final in 03 and 2011 and probably last year, I think. So I mean, that's, in terms of a record, that's outstanding for a club over a period of 15, 16 years. You know, you can't get much better than that. And no, we still had a good group of players. I guess, you know, we only lost grand finals by 1 point, by 2 points, and the last one by about 12. The only difference, I guess, from us and Point Chef, they had a way, way bigger budget, probably 3 times the size of Mount Albert's, and they just sort of bought players and all the rest of it. But that didn't really worry us. That wasn't in our control. We controlled what we could, and we had some really good players. We still had some really good years and fun times. Just, you know, we couldn't quite get over that last hurdle in the last game. Yeah.
The Kiwi Shield has been in the club's trophy cabinet for many years.
The Kiwi Shield is a points accumulation between the top side and the reserves, which is, of course, to win that shield, you needed a strong reserve grade, you needed a strong premier side. Yeah, and we've held that for quite a few years now. I couldn't tell you how many years, but that shield's been sitting here for a long time.
Some years ago, Brian Morwood, a jeweller by trade, donated the Lion Ring, which is usually awarded to the Premier Player of the Year.
Last year it didn't. I gave it to Steve Buckingham. He individually, over a decade or 10 or 12 years, was responsible for 90% of our success. As a player, firstly, and as a coach.
Players and other members of the club are proud of Mount Albert's achievements over many years, and the friendly, supportive family atmosphere that's continued through the decades.
Also, my best friends, I met them through the club. Yeah, that's right. You know, it's family club, you know.
Yeah, I think if there was a local club that other clubs could model themselves on, it'd be here. You know, just because all those elements that come together, like we've got, you know, it comes down to your volunteers. We've got good volunteers who make good things happen, good people. You know, that's right through from our coaches, through to our admin people and all the rest of it. That people, you know, have got that backbone of old players and people like yourself who continually put a bit of money into the club and keep the place functioning that way, and that's massive.
Absolutely family club. I've got daughters involved and I've got grandsons involved, and I'm not the only one. It's I think it's a special club, Mount Albert, and it's a privilege to be here.
Okay, like we've been players, but over the years this club has had some fantastic people. You know, as Jeff said before, behind the scenes that have, you know, that have run the place and made the place, you know, successful. You know, we've always been blessed and sort of unsung, really. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I think that's been the strength of Mount Albert going forward the years is all the families, you know. You sort of made your best mates here, you know, and you can, you know, I'm lucky enough to come, you know, I'm coaching my boy there, so his grandson's playing for this club, and, you know, and he loves it, just loves it. You know, long may it continue. I hope Mount Albert always keeps doing that, like look after our people, and we'll have lots of success, you know.
Arnie and Bevan are amongst those at the club who have worked hard in the background.
I get a lot out of it, otherwise I just wouldn't do it, but to be, I guess, part of something and be able to have an influence in the direction, I guess, that this place heads in, is really, really rewarding.
For me, from a young age with the young boys in there, you know, the first thing for me was for them to enjoy the game so they love the game, because once they love the game, they never leave the game. So it's always enjoyment. You've got to enjoy what you're doing. You know, if you don't enjoy what you're doing, you're going to lose them. They're going to go somewhere else. So if I can, you know, if I can help them to enjoy the game and love it, then we've got them forever. And hence probably the reason our teams have done well, and we've hardly ever lost any kids.
Often when I'm working, I guess, for the club or doing things for the club, or I just think about all of the people that have gone before me, to be honest, and just hope that I do an okay job, and to see the survival of the club.
People are really, really friendly, helpful, respectful, all those sort of things that you know that you kind of look for in a club.
It's always been a good club, and I've always been proud of being a member, and particularly proud of being a legend.
For myself, I've been involved with the club, playing here in the schoolboys, 17, 18s, and then coming back in 99 and helping the club get through from the Sharman and into the Bartercard Cup. And I look back upon those years and just the camaraderie that was there, the team spirit, the support. It's something that I'll never forget, and that's what kept on bringing me back to the club. And I think that goes for a lot of players and also members of the club. You know, once you win a competition or finals football, there's a connection there with those people, the players, the coaches, management, that will never be forgotten. In 10, 20 years' time, you might run into those people and it's just like, you know, it was yesterday. And I think that's part of our success here at Mount Albert is through those years. We've had great people in coaching and management. We've had great players. And we've had great support too. People keep coming back and giving back to the club. And I hope going forward into the future that we can keep installing those values and those beliefs and keep giving back. We're in a changing times with society and with young children and Gen Ys that are coming through, and you know, with these changing times, we just want to install that that belief in the club and belief in themselves. In my view, Mount Albert is the greatest club in the country. Look over the years, its success, and just who we are on and off the field, what we're installing. We're giving back into the community now, setting up homework clubs, really believing in trying to build confidence in the young generation that's coming through, that's going to be the future of this club. Mount Albert is the greatest club in New Zealand.